Dr. Jonathan Haidt is a professor of business ethics at New York University's Stern School of Business and author of several books, including The Righteous Mind, Why Good People Are Divided by Politics and Religion, as well as The Happiness Hypothesis. Dr. Haidt, welcome to the show.
Thank you, David. Please call me John.
John, all right, I will call you John, but I want to stress that you are a professor at college in 2016. So first off, are you doing this from a bunker? Are you secure? And do people know where you are? Do you have a panic room, a safe room? How's it going?
I'm in a business school, so it's a sort of an island of pragmatism in a larger sea of politicization. So I'm okay. Don't worry about me.
That is nice to hear. So we're going to get to that larger sea in a second, but that's an interesting distinction. Are you sort of sheltered as a business person where you guys are really looking at numbers all the time and really what actually works? And it's away a little bit from the social sciences, which I love, of course, but are you sheltered from some of this stuff?
Well, yeah, because the craziness comes out of the humanities originally. It's gender studies, all the ethnic studies programs. That's where a lot of these ideas come from. So they've thoroughly taken over the humanities. The natural sciences are largely untouched. They're fine. And then the social sciences are in the middle. And that's how I got involved, is I'm a social psychologist. And as these norms as political correctness began warping research in the social sciences, I started getting more concerned.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to dive very deep into that. But let's talk a little bit about some of the stuff you've written about and some of your research first. So you talk about emotions and morality a lot, and you've written about it a lot. And is morality, is it quantifiable? How do you do this as a professor, as someone that needs evidence? How are you able to quantify what morality actually is?
So I've been studying moral psychology since 1987, since I started graduate school. And my basic approach has been to say, this is an aspect of human nature. If you look around the world, people are sexual. So you could study sexuality. People like music, people talk, you could study linguistics. Well, one thing people do, they judge others. Wherever you go, they gossip, they criticize, they gang up, they get angry. That's what I study.
You're just talking about Twitter right now, right?
Well, actually, that's right. I mean, you take all these ancient circuits that we have for doing morality in small tribal groups, add in social media, and it's like you inject, speed and cocaine and everything into our normal circuits, and that's part of what's happened.
How do you make that distinction then, now that we live in a time where everyone is constantly typing and tweeting and texting and Snapchatting? How do you separate what's sort of real versus what just exists in that world? I find it very hard to do because, what people will say to my face about my show or what they think of me is often very different than what they might write in 140 characters.
Yeah. Well, one of the great insights, a metaphor I like to use, is from The Matrix. If you've seen any of those movies.
Of course.
The Matrix is a consensual hallucination. And that is a great metaphor for social life. All of social life is a consensual hallucination. And so it's real, but it's not real in the way that rocks and trees are real. But if social media creates this alternate universe, that's real. And so part of what's happened is we evolved to live in these small scale societies. And now that we have all these tools, it's like we're suddenly getting hit with these levels of this fourth and fifth dimension of social reality. And I think it's affecting young people in particular in ways that we just don't understand yet.
Yeah, I did a video a couple of weeks ago about how we really are becoming the Matrix because we sort of are the batteries for our little devices now, right? I mean, we're almost living in a parallel society on there.
Yeah, well, that's right. And so, as a social scientist, I keep reminding myself, no matter how awful all this stuff is, in a sense, the universities are kind of burning themselves down. But I kind of sit here and sometimes I think, wow, this is really interesting from a professional point of view.
Right. As the world burns, certain people have more value, I guess, or something like that. So as someone that studies this stuff and writes about it, do you find it curious that we seem to live in a time where we value emotion more than fact? When I say we, I don't mean the two of us, but as a society, at least at the moment, that seems to be where we're at.
Well, we all think that we have reason on our side. So I'm non-political. I'm a centrist. I used to be on the left. Once, as I began studying this stuff, I sort of non-political. I try to understand everybody. And one thing that fascinates me is that when I talk to groups on the right, they say, yeah, but sure, all that stuff you say is very interesting, but isn't the bottom line that our side is based on reason and their side is all just based on emotion? When I talk to groups on the left, it's exactly the same thing.
Right.
Reason, and the other side is emotional. Now, my research, and a lot of people's research these days, is on what's called motivated reasoning. So we're all reasoning all the time, but that reasoning is sort of constrained and pushed and shaped by, it's not just emotions, it's sort of our commitments, our intuitions, our group identity. So we're always reasoning, we're always having an emotion or emotions and commitments, and they're sort of very intertwined.
Yeah, so that's interesting. I know this about you, that you used to be on the left, and now would you say you're more apolitical just by the definition of the work that you do, or do you really find yourself a centrist in terms of what your actual beliefs are?
Well, I for a long time, I hated the Republican Party, and I think that since Newt Gingrich, they have become a really irresponsible party. And so I called myself somebody who was in the center, but I didn't like the Republicans. I think the Democrats are, especially with all this campus stuff,
yeah,
and the way the federal government is now telling universities, you must prosecute this. And now with the bathroom stuff, you must have it's like, so this is actually kind of driving me a bit more libertarian, like, what is the urgent need of the day? And right now, I think the urgent need of the day is for central government to back off. We have so much diversity in this country. And if it's going to be that the federal government gets to control things, then it's going to be a constant struggle to gain control of the federal government so that our side can beat the hell out of the other side.
Yeah. So all right. So I wasn't planning on going there, but let's do this the North Carolina bathroom situation for a moment, because there's an element of morality, of wanting to treat people equally. And then I can actually understand the concerns of some of the people also. If I had a 5-year-old daughter and, just some random man who said that he was a woman wanted to go into the bathroom, I could understand that. But the edict from the federal government has been, you're gonna do this. And the NBA said they're not gonna have the All-Star game down there unless they go with this. And you hear about bands that won't play down there and all this stuff. Meanwhile, they'll play in Russia and China and all kinds of other places. How does morality factor into that and the laws that we make?
That's great. So I don't want to talk about the substance of it. I don't want to get into the details about bathroom policy, but it's a great example for us about the way morality works. So one of the 3 principles of moral psychology that I cover in my book, In the Righteous Mind, is morality binds and blinds. So we love to identify something as a sacred value, sacred object, like a rock or a tree. Traditional religions would make a person or a river, something is sacred. And then we circle around it, we worship it, we make sacrifices to it. And that's the way religions have always worked. Well, now that formal religions are fading out, but we have these sort of new or moralistic religions. And so, fighting racism, very good cause. Well, when fighting racism becomes the center of a religious cult, you get all these extreme policies. And this is what universities have been for several decades. They've been basically cults devoted to fighting racism. Now that, again, a good aim, but it has been warping research.
Right. So the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Exactly. So just go with me here. We got this 40, 50-year thing about racism. Okay. So then we have this 20-year thing about gay rights and gay marriage. And everybody in universities is totally in favor of gay rights, gay marriage. That's been true for decades. And it's the most amazing thing that in American society, just in about 20 years, we go from no way, never, to, wow, okay, I guess it's the law of the land and most people accept it. So 20 years, that's amazing. Okay, but now what's weird is 3 years ago, nobody knew a transgender person. Nobody thought about it. It wasn't on anybody's radar. Mm-hmm. So to make it in 3 years from that to you must do this, I think is a bridge too far. And this I think Obama is going to be remembered for this. I think it's going to cause a lot of reaction because the country was not ready for this, and it's not appropriate for the federal government. I can see why the Supreme Court would weigh in on marriage rights because marriage has to be coordinated among the states. I get that. Bathrooms, the federal government bathrooms, did nobody read the Federalist Papers? Has nobody read the Constitution? This is nuts.
Right. So that gets to what you said earlier, that you take an issue that you can have some moral debate about, but then your reaction is, wait a minute, I don't want the government, the federal government coming in and telling what a state can do in its bathroom. And then it takes someone like yourself and says, well, now I'm going to be more interested in libertarianism because I want the government to back out of this. That's really interesting.
That's right. Oh, and the reason I brought that all up to say the way to understand what's going on in the bathroom controversy is that as certain elements of the social justice left have been victorious on certain fronts, this is the newest battleground. And so this becomes an object of sort of sacredness and extreme devotion. So the way to understand all these moral movements is a kind of a crusade that binds people together. So I'm a Durkheimian. That means that I believe that Emil Durkheim, the sociologist, is the greatest social scientist who ever lived. And Durkheim taught us to see social action, social activities, often as efforts to create group solidarity, to strengthen our team so that we can fight that team. And that, I think, is what's happening a lot on campus.
So that would describe what people are saying is intersectionality, right? Where sort of all these groups kind of that have often very valid problems and they want to be heard, where they just sort of glob together and then they become this sort of other monster that nobody really intended, right?
That's right. That's right. And it has, and a good moral and political movement needs a good, clear enemy. So you must believe that the other side is really strong and is adamant against you, and racism is everywhere, sexism is everywhere, transphobia is everywhere, homophobia is everywhere. So you need a good, solid enemy. And even though universities are the most anti-racist, anti-sexist business in the country, but it's an article of faith that they are institutionally racist, institutionally sexist. So it's an incoherent movement if you look at it from the outside, but psychologically it's very standard sort of Manichaean us versus them religion.
Yeah, what do you think it is about the human mind that doesn't allow people a little space to change? So, for example, as you said, the transgender rights movement is happening so fast, right? I'm obviously 100% for it. I want these people to be treated 100% equally, right? So of course I'm for it, but this idea that if you aren't completely on board the way you want to be, they want you to be on board, that suddenly you're transphobic. Or even, look, 7 years ago, Barack Obama wasn't for gay marriage. Was he a homophobe 7 years ago? I mean, that's just silly. So what is it about human psychology that doesn't allow, it seems like a certain subset of people, the second they make a decision, everyone has to evolve with them at the exact same time?
Right, because we evolved in small tribes. We evolved, so one of the wisest dictums or cultural sayings is the Bedouin proverb, me against my brother, me and my brother against our cousin, me, my brother and cousin against the stranger. So we're very good at making these recursive, like, this group against that group. And so what's happening, and maybe we can get into this sort of the idea of victimhood culture.
Yeah.
What's happening is a kind of a moral movement on campus where sort of the social justice left, and you find this on every campus. You find a group, they'll meet, they'll often take gender studies courses and intersectionality stuff, all that stuff. So you'll have a group which is very much in an us versus them mindset, and everybody on every side thinks that they're the victim. That's what's so interesting here.
Right. They think they're actually, I mean, there's a list. Someone's got to have the list, right? Do you have the list of just who's in where in the pecking order?
Oh yeah, there's there's 7. So there's the big 3, which is where almost all the controversy, almost all the stuff on campus is about. So it's African Americans, women, and LGBT. So that's what almost everything is on campus. And then there's what you might call the little 3, not that they're small, but just they're less prominent. And that is Latino, handicapped of any kind, and Native Americans. So those are the 6 that have been around for a few decades.
Yeah.
Just in the last year, it's Muslims. So the left, so this is very alarming to me. I mean, I'm Jewish, and suddenly to see, Jews are oppressors, Jews are evil. So there's a lot of sympathy on the left. So in Europe, the left is very, very pro-Palestinian and certainly anti-Zionist and sometimes anti-Semitic. And until a year ago, I was thinking, well, America's different, but it's getting much more like Europe.
Right. So, I mean, I see articles about this constantly. So what is it then? Jews are obviously a minority, 1% of the United States, basically. There's only about 15 million Jews. I think that might be on the high side in the entire world. How did they get booted out of the Oppression Olympics? There are these ideas. It comes originally from Marxism and developed by Herbert Marcuse and others. The whole idea of privilege, the idea that some groups are privileged. And so there's a way of looking at the world in which you start by saying, what's your group or your class? And if you're high, you're the bad people. And if you're low, you're the good people. And so that's exactly what Mao's Cultural Revolution was all about. Mm-hmm. There are the good classes, which are the peasants, and there are the bad classes, which are the educated classes. And you don't
go out and kill the good classes automatically, but they're under suspicion. They're constantly under suspicion. They don't get to speak, and there's a lot of writing in leftist circles about this. And so when you start that way, it just predictably is going to go into constant splitting and civil war and chaos. So that's what happens to leftist movements. They eat their own. That was the Jacobins in France after the Revolution.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're seeing, I think, happen on campus now. We're seeing battles between feminists, between splinter groups. And if you think about it, and this is what's so infuriating, you're on a campus, you try to make arguments, you try to use reasons, but you meet students who the very first thing they do is they size you up. What's your race? What's your gender? I'm judging you on the basis of that. I'm not listening to you. You're a bad person based on your race and gender. I'm like, really? Your whole worldview is you start by saying some people are good or bad because of their race? Do you know what you sound like?
Right. They sound like maybe they should have been mainstream 50 years ago, but certainly not now.
If you want to create a social movement, a social revolution, be the change you seek. If you want to stop racism and sexism, then don't be hyper racist and sexist.
Right. That's not rocket science. So what about the professors? I know you can't speak for all the professors at all the universities all over the place, but everyone sees this thing happening. We see it every day, a different school with another one of these incidences. Are professors talking about this stuff? Is there any movement by faculty to fight it? I mean, what's going on there?
So this has been really fascinating. And this is, so here's the situation. The professoriate has leaned left, certainly since the progressive era. And in the 20th century, I've been collecting data on this, me and my colleagues. In the 20th century, it was basically 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 left to right. And that's fine. You can, we don't care about equality. The key thing is what's called institutionalized disconfirmation. If somebody says something, there has to be somebody on the other side who's going to say, wait a second, that makes no sense. So that's the way it always was in the 20th century.
Right, so 2-to-1, you're okay with that ratio?
Oh my God, if we could get to 4-to-1, I would be so thrilled.
Right, it's not. It's closer to what, 5-to-1 now or something?
No, it's 7-to-1 overall, but 5 or 6-to-1 overall. But almost all the conservatives are in engineering schools, business schools. If you look at the core areas of the university, so the humanities and social sciences, it's 10-to-1 or 20-to-1.
Wow.
And once that happens, the few that are not on the left go into the closet. So the key thing that everyone needs to keep in mind is that almost all professors are on the left, but they're not illiberal. So you've got the key thing to keep in mind is what's happened here is the illiberal left. I guess you call it the regressive left.
I'll go with illiberal for our purposes.
The illiberal left is a small, not tiny, but it's a small portion. And then the liberal left, because liberals traditionally believed in freedom of speech, freedom of thought. So the illiberal left has everybody else scared, and it's the students overwhelmingly, because the students, everyone's afraid of the students. The students are afraid of the students, professors are afraid of the students. So the illiberal left make these demands, they march into the president's office, they demand this and that, they accuse everybody of racism and sexism. And because everybody's on the left and everyone's afraid of the students, nobody stands up. So when the Christakises at Yale, Christakis, so within 3 days, there was a giant petition, 500 Yale professors backing the students. Well, I had one of my research assistants find out what departments they're all in. It was gender studies, film studies, English, it was that stuff. So the humanities are they're totally on board with this. The humanities are full of illiberal leftists. Mm-hmm. 4 weeks later, a small petition, 40 names, mostly STEM, mostly scientists. So the natural scientists are still liberals. They believe in openness, they believe in debate. So that's what you have to keep in mind. The problem comes out of the humanities, the social sciences are in the middle, and the question is, where does the illiberal left have such dominance that the professors are afraid to speak? And I started a group called Heterodox Academy, me and a law professor, Nick Rosenkrantz. We got together and we realized, wow, we got the same problems in our field. And so we just started getting together people who were willing to say something about it. And it's been thrilling because we're writing. People, if you're listening, please go to heterodoxacademy.org. We've been writing, we've been talking about this, and nobody's objecting. Nobody is saying we're bad people. Nobody's saying we're wrong, because professors are largely afraid, and a lot of them are thrilled that we're speaking up.
Right. You don't think there's a listserv somewhere? I know you guys love the listservs, right? You don't think there's one somewhere going, that John Haidt,
Oh, there probably is, but they haven't written anything publicly. I mean, I do Google searches. I keep looking for someone who's going to criticize us.
Right. Well, that's actually, it's nice to get some good news out of this. Do you think there's? Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think what we're in is the emperor's new clothes, where a small group is saying, oh, everything is racist and sexist, and we need to do all these things, and most people are kind of uncomfortable with this, but they're not speaking up. But outside the university, everyone thinks they're crazy. And inside the university, a lot of people think that the protesters are extremists, but they're afraid to speak up. But gradually, as more and more of them get attacked, and almost everybody's getting attacked at some point, as more and more of them get attacked, they come to us.
So are we winning then? Even though it doesn't really feel like it, the sense that I get from you is actually pretty hopeful that there's something changing right now.
Yes. So I think that this was a kind of a revolution that went way too far. And again, as you've said, you and I mean, we're both in favor of gay rights. We don't want Black students to feel unwelcome. I mean, so we're very sympathetic to the complaints and to the problems. It's a question of what are the proper methods of addressing this. And the methods that the students have demanded, more social justice training, more bias reporting systems, anonymous reporting systems, diversity training, these things are going to make things so much worse. And what I'm really encouraged by is this. Outside the university, everyone thinks they're crazy. And so the first university presidents who just caved in, so Peter Salovey at Yale, Christina Paxson at Brown, the first university presidents who were faced with a mob of angry students and who said, whoa, you're right. We're so racist. Yale is racist. Brown is racist. Oh my God, here, $50 million, Peter Salovey said. Christina, $100 million for diversity. So the first presidents did that. What happens? The alumni are like, what are you doing? What are you doing with our, no, we're not giving to you anymore. And Missouri, things are way down in Missouri. They're in big trouble.
Yeah.
The first presidents all caved in. But then they started hearing from alumni. They're laughing stocks. Everyone's making fun of them. And so now we're seeing some presidents willing to stand up because they know that if they cave in, they're going to be made fun of forever, and they care about their legacy. So the greatest one, you hear about Ohio State? That was really thrilling. You know about this one?
Which one is this? There's so many. I'll have to go through my file. Which one?
So the first real, so at Ohio State, the student protesters, they came charging into the administration building, and they were chanting and shouting and occupied. Here are our demands. We demand to see the president. We demand, here's our ultimatum. And so the president sends an envoy who says, if you're here to give the president an ultimatum, he will never meet with you. He will not accept an ultimatum. If you want to come talk to him some other time, please schedule a visit. He'd be glad to talk. Now, when you came into this building, you made everyone feel afraid. This is an office building, and the workers in this building felt afraid. It was brilliant. They were using the whole language of safety against the protesters.
Wow. So
you made them feel afraid. Now, they've all gone home now. They're coming to work tomorrow morning. And they have to have a safe place to work. So at 5 o'clock, the campus police are going to come in and arrest anyone who's still here. We will give you a chance to go to jail for your convictions. If you're still here, you will be arrested and expelled from Ohio State. Good day. Oh my God, it was people should just look up the video, just Ohio State student protesters.
Yeah, and so I assume they left, and then what happened after that?
They left. Yeah, that's right, they left. And now everybody's praising that president. And nothing bad happened to him as far as I know. So I think we've turned a corner. Presidents aren't going to just lie down and give in anymore. That's one. Alumni are mad as hell. They're saying, we're not giving if you do this because we believe in free speech and we don't want to turn it into a left-wing propaganda factory. And I think we're going to see more students rising up. We're not seeing that yet. I mean, there are conservative groups on each campus, but even they are often afraid to speak up. But I think next year we're going to see a lot more students standing up, alumni standing up. So I think the tide is turning.
Yeah, so do you think, is the best way to decouple people from these bad ideas exactly what that president did? Because I get people emailing me all the time that say they hear the things we're talking about on this show, and they'll post something, a video of ours or something, and then they say, then I'm in a fight with my brother, and my cousin hates me, and this one blocked me and telling me I'm a racist and a bigot, and all this stuff, and they always asking me for advice on how to engage with these people. So would you say that really is the best way to do it?
Well, right. So when you are the first people to stand up and like a video that is critical to protesters, you're going to hear from your Facebook network. And that's what keeps people down. But probably the majority of people are at least freaked out by this a little bit. So I think things are going to change when the high school kids who are in high school now, when they join in laughing at these silly campus snowflakes, at students who are afraid to see a photograph or to hear a word. So I think mockery and humor is actually the way that honor revolutions happen. So keep up the mockery and humor, I say. Good work.
I know. We need George Carlin back, as I think every morning when I wake up, if only George Carlin was around for this. So some of this, I think, is coupled to human happiness, which is another thing that you talk about a lot. And basically, you say that when humans aren't only doing things for themselves, they actually are measurably happier. Did I say that correctly?
That's right.
So interestingly, a lot of these movements, there's this idea that if you're doing good for other people, that somehow you'll be happier. But in a weird way, that doesn't even really add up, right?
Well, it does in a funny way. So in general, people need a sense of meaning and purpose in their lives, and young people are really looking for it. So I went to Yale undergrad, and we all joined protests against apartheid. And, that was a big cause, was fighting apartheid. So we were all united in fighting a faraway evil. And that brought us together and made us feel that we were doing something important. No, sorry.
They're shutting the power down on you.
Shut me down, that's right. Okay, so that wasn't very destructive.
Yeah.
But, the world is a much more just place than it was in the 1980s. And university campuses are much more just and open than they were in the 1980s. There's not a lot to protest. So the movements now there's what's called concept creep. So the standard for what counts as a violation has gotten so low that everybody's violating it every day. And so this joins people together to fight each other and their local community. And college doesn't look like it's any fun anymore. I mean, you're walking on eggshells, everybody's attacking everyone. So it's true.
Are they not smoking enough weed? Am I that long out of college? It hasn't been that long, but it seems like they're not smoking enough weed anymore.
Yeah, but I'd say weed, Xanax, and let's see, what else? Actually, those two, that would do it.